So I mentioned that we're in the step 4 of One Breath at a Time, and that going to take a couple of side trips uh, from the book because I've kind of had some thoughts about just different ways to think about inventory from a Buddhist perspective, and I hope that'll be interesting for people. I guess we should maybe wait a minute or two for people to arrive, for my throat to clear. I will mention still some space on the upcoming Southern Dharma retreat, which particularly is a good one for the people on the East Coast because it's going to run on an East Coast time frame. And if you go to the Southern Dharma Retreat Center website, oh, there it is. Thank you, Angela. Put in the link to it. And there's going to be 2 other teachers with me, Walt Opie and Greg Pergament. Greg teaches Qigong as well as meditation. And Walt is in Joseph Goldstein's current teacher training program. So they're both really good teachers. And, this is this kind of experiment to see how much of a sort of retreat we can accomplish online without making it sort of a Zoom, just dreadful sort of thing of staring at your screen all day. So there'll be several sessions each day, and then space in between the sessions when you can practice on your own and have your meals and do things. So that's September 30th. No, that's wrong. It's not September. It's September something. Oh, there it is. It's in the chat. September 2nd to September 7th. Okay. And then I was thinking of the next retreat. We're going to do what we call the Vajrapani retreat, which Vajrapani is the Tibetan Buddhist center that we've been teaching this retreat there since 2004. We won't be there, but we're going to, again, do this kind of hybrid online retreat with a group of teachers and, see how it goes. It's definitely not ideal, but there are things about doing an online retreat that are helpful and that are sort of give you advantages over the residential retreat. First of all, it's a lot cheaper. You don't have to go anywhere. You can sleep in your own bed and you can eat whatever food you want to eat. So I think those are all pluses. You won't have to stand in line to get fed. Yeah. There won't be any annoying people breathing too loud in the meditation hall. So on and on, I can tell you. So, but strictly practice-wise, I've done a fair amount of solo retreats, and I can tell you that there is a certain advantage from meditation-wise when you're kind of in your own space and when you're not surrounded by a lot of people, that there can be a little bit less anxiety and kind of ease of just being on your own. And so, if you're thinking, oh, it's not a real retreat, you can make it a real retreat. It's really up to you in terms of how much you commit to it. And that's going to be kind of the spirit of it, that we don't want people to overcommit. Like if you want to come on the retreat, but you still need to, take care of your kids, or you have a volunteer, or you have to do some work at home. I mean, I don't think you'd be practical if you have to work for people to either make it very immersive or make it a little more just integrated into their daily lives. So think about it. I think they're charging $25 a day for the retreat with Southern Dharma, and our retreat, which we haven't posted yet, the Vajrapani retreat, which is going to be September 30th to October 4th, I think. We're going to charge a little bit for that, but only in order to get people to commit to it, and then we're going to donate all the money that's uh, charged. And anybody who can't afford to pay anything will just say, "Don't pay." So it'll be very easy. So that's a little heads up on that. Meanwhile, uh, here we are, and we can begin sitting. So just settling back into a comfortable and stable posture. I will say that the one kind of risk about sitting on your own is that you get too comfortable. In that, if you're just sort of lying down or sinking into your couch, uh, you can sort of get just space out, get tired, drowsy. So, I always, even though I actually am sitting on the couch, I keep a cushion behind my back to hold myself upright so that I'm in a posture that really will allow me to stay alert. Of course, there's no guarantees. You can fall asleep in any posture. I've fallen asleep standing up on meditation retreats. So, and you can close your eyes, or if you're more comfortable, having your eyes open, just lowering your gaze. I used the word stable when I mentioned getting into your posture, so that's a good word, a good concept to have in terms of settling. Are you sitting in a way in which you don't have to move, in which your body can be at ease in stillness? I'll just suggest this morning that we start with a smile. And this is a really nice addition to our meditation, is to very gently smile as we're meditating. Notice how it feels, if that lifts your spirits a little bit. We're not grinning, we're just we have a wry smile. A smile is saying, here I am. This is it. Could be better, could be worse. This is life. Letting the body soften. Even when we have this idea of softening, it makes us aware of where there is not softness in the body. So it helps us to just, again, find an ease in the body. We don't have to do anything special. We don't have to stretch the body, move the body in order to soften. We just bring the intention of softening and see what happens. Just feeling body, feeling that there is a body. When we feel the body, we feel life. We feel energy. We feel the nervous system and feel the heart and blood flowing, the breath flowing in and out. All the perceptions that tell us we are alive. Alive with a smile. Opening to sound, whether subtle or gross. Notice the inner sound, sound in the ears. You might hear your heart or your breath, depending on how quiet your environment is. Feeling your mood with a smile. And connecting with the breath. Feel the breath. A living thing. The air touching the nostrils, the chest and belly, rising and falling. As we start to meditate on these experiences, the experience of body, of sound, of energy, of feeling, of breath, it can be striking to realize how much of the time we don't notice any of these things. When we bring them forward, they're quite absorbing. A whole spectrum of experience is happening more or less continuously. And yet the dominance of thought often seems to wipe them all out. Don't even know we're breathing. Don't know we're in a body. Don't hear anything. Don't feel anything. The life of the mind is so powerful and so habituated. So with this practice, we try to train ourselves to be less absorbed and lost in thought. It's not that there's anything wrong with thoughts. But first of all, we just want to put them in a little bit more of a balance in our awareness so that they're not so dominant. And secondly, we want to see how thoughts create suffering. Well, there can be pain in the body or unpleasant sounds or difficult feelings. Dukkha or suffering is created in the mind. So investigating this, seeing this clearly, and letting go of those causes is the true purpose of this practice. Letting go on this level is what we mean by freedom. Letting go of the causes of suffering. May all those who are dear to me be free from suffering. May I be free from suffering. May all beings be free from suffering. Okay. Um, so, talking about step 4, and the last part of One Breath at a Time that I read from was called Buddhist Inventory, and then I mentioned how then there are the succeeding sections of the book, the next two, I think, or three. There's a precept inventory and hindrance inventory, and then positive inventory, and I want to get into all of those. I will over the coming weeks. But I also mentioned that there were some things that aren't covered from the viewpoint of inventory in the book, and I guess I'm using a very kind of open idea of what the word inventory means. You know, in the 12 steps, you know, step 4 says we made a searching and fearless moral inventory. And step 10 says we continue to take personal inventory. And so it's very much about our personal behavior, essentially. And I suppose that includes our thinking, but Buddhism kind of presents us with these guidelines for living and for spiritual practice and for spiritual growth, which when we study the Dharma, when we study Buddhist teachings, what we're studying is these guidelines, is these practices, but also concepts and ways of thinking about how to approach life. So if I'm recalling properly, since it was long ago, last Friday, that I started talking about the Eightfold Path, I believe I went through right view, right intention, right action, and or right action, right speech, right livelihood. So that leaves us 3 more elements. Actually, I have a PowerPoint page that shows the Eightfold Path. So I'm going to share that screen with you just for a minute so that you can follow along on this. Where is it? There it is. So this is the Eightfold Path, and in the top I show how it's broken down into 3 sections: Sila, Samadhi, Panya. So Sila is right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Samadhi is right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And Panya is right view and right intention. And as I said, I've gone through view, intention, speech, action, and livelihood. So that brings us to effort. So what does it mean to take an inventory of our effort? So we can say, first of all, that this inventory is an inventory of our, in the broadest sense, of our spiritual practice, but more specifically, our meditation practice. And then we could also apply it to our, to our recovery program. So effort, we can see, is really important in that regard, right? Because just showing up here today is an action of right effort. Showing up for your daily meditation is right effort. Showing up for your meetings is right effort. So that's the sort of external way that we practice right effort. And so the inventory of that is obviously to say, am I showing up? Am I doing the work? Or am I just sort of thinking I'm going to be carried along by something I did in the past, or that I don't have to bother? And then what is my engagement? I've talked about how when I first got sober, I just sat in the back of the rooms, sometimes just stood in the back of the rooms. And that was not right effort. That was holding back. So how much, it's not really enough to just sit down on your cushion and say, okay, I'm meditating now. There's that engagement. So the second part of right effort, in this way I'm characterizing it anyway, there's the external effort of showing up, and then there's the internal effort. And this is what particularly applies to our meditation practice. How am I engaging in my practice when I sit? Am I just expecting some magic to happen because I'm sitting there in front of a Buddha statue or something? Or am I taking some kind of active steps to make something happen? And here, we've been talking about effort in the class with Vimalasara that I know some of you have been in, and that there isn't, a right way, even though we have this idea of right effort. It's right. Well, is it? What does that mean? The word right is a translation. So I'll get into this a little bit, which I haven't been doing a lot of Pali in this class, but I'm going to go back to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to put this in the chat. The word for right in Pali is sama, S-A-M-M-A. And it has the meaning of something like being in tune. It's actually a musical term, apparently, which is very interesting because, as we were talking about last night, there's a simile the Buddha gives of tuning an instrument. And the right view is like tuning an instrument. Of course, we have this being in tune for the whole Eightfold Path, right? Right view is like being in tune with view, being in tune with intention, being in tune with action. But I like this idea of being in tune better than right, because, you can be a little out of tune and it's not so bad, right? Listen to Bob Dylan, there's one of the songs on Highway 61 Revisited where my ears kind of rattle when I listen to the guitar on it, because he just obviously didn't tune before. But it still sounds great, Anyway, I digress. So right effort is something that we have to discover for ourselves, and this is, the essence of the path, right? That there's all these guidelines, but then when we really look closely at them, we realize that every moment we have to respond skillfully in that moment. There isn't just a black and white solution to it. I'll read the piece, if I can find it, from Joseph Goldstein that I read last night that really points to this. All these teachings remind us that meditation is an art. On this step of the path, right effort, it's not a question of simply following any one technique or thinking there is only one correct approach. Rather, we understand the mind as a vital, vibrant, and ever-changing interplay of different mental qualities. If we have a strong commitment to awakening, then we investigate, experiment, and test different ways of abandoning that which is unskillful. The Buddha was the ultimate pragmatist. The teachings are not about dogma, but about skillful means, about understanding what works. So this puts the onus on us. We're the ones who have to calculate right effort in any given moment. It's what makes it so challenging. Or that the question about effort is really the foundational question of a meditation practice. When you're on retreat, especially, there's this question, what's right effort now? And sometimes right effort is taking a nap, but we have to just be very careful. And so this, as Joseph says, we have to experiment. And we have to experiment for ourselves because each of us is different and each moment is different. And, there's no perfect kind of arriving at right effort. So one of the things that I recommend people to do as they meditate is to track effort. And actually, there's several things we can track as we're meditating. We're trying to track the breath and track, are we, the basic thing we're tracking is, am I on the breath or the concentration object, or am I off it, right? That's the kind of first thing we're tracking. And then you kind of track your energy. Am I falling asleep? That's one to keep a track of, just catch yourself with that. But tracking effort also, like, am I just sloughing off now? Or am I, trying to count every single breath and don't miss a breath, because if you do, you're a bad meditator, are you getting into that? So you kind of, this is, a subtle way of being with meditation. So it's not, again, so much like, meditating is just being with the breath. And if your mind wanders, come back. Okay, well, that's a starting point. But if you start to break it down to these details, you see that it really requires this detailed tracking. And even the tracking then can become another sort of obsessive thing, right? Where you get like compulsively tracking. So this is why right effort is, to me, really at the heart of practice. And it can only really be understood through repetition. It's why we meditate every day. It's why we go on retreats and meditate multiple times in a day, because through doing it over and over and over, you start to learn about these subtleties. And you also, at least for me, come to the realization of the limits of your capacity to do this right, to get it right. And so you're playing in that area between trying to get it right and sincerely trying to do your best, and not getting caught in a kind of self-judgment around that, and being able to be easeful with it, not creating more suffering with it. That's where we were talking last night about the 7 factors, the factor of joy. This is another one of the lists that I'd like to go through in this, thinking about inventory, the 7 factors. But one of the really interesting things about practice is that when we attain a certain amount of stability combined with a certain amount of opening, and opening, I know is kind of a vague term, but I mean a kind of lack. What I mean by opening is not trying to control what's arising, just really letting things come through. Then there's a kind of energy that's called piti, P-I-T-I in Pali, and it's translated as rapture or joy. And you can't make it happen, but it happens. You can't not make it happen. You can't stop it from happening either. If you bring that balance of mind with an openness of allowing, and that's a kind of letting go, this joyful energy arises. And this isn't, again, about control or effort. It's, we sometimes call it effortless effort. It's kind of the Zen term for it. And wow, now you're really getting into this mysterious place, right? That Suzuki Roshi in Zen Mind Beginner's Mind said that it's the secret of practice is finding this kind of effort. And he doesn't elaborate on what that means, because the secret isn't something somebody is keeping from you. It's a secret that only you can discover for yourself through your own process. It's finding what effortless effort means, the effort that allows this energy to come through, this buoyant, joyous energy to move through. And I bring that up because all of this focus on effort can start to feel, again, like I have to get it right. But not just that, but that meditation is some kind of a grind. Oh, I have to do all this tracking. I have to remember to track all these different things. How am I going to do that? And I have to show up and do it for hours and hours. And, it's not really, that's not what it's meant to be. When we find this space of effortless effort, there's ease and joy within it. Someone was asking a question last night about how she found that between her breaths, she found this place of stillness, of quiet. And what should she do about that? And I suggested to her that place of silence and stillness is actually there all the time. She's just noticing it in that moment. But that if you shift your attention from the breath to the silence, to the stillness, that you can just be with that instead of being with the breath. Now, I'm talking about very subtle states now, and I don't want to kind of create craving in the mind. Ooh, that sounds really good. I want that joy, and I want that silence and that space, because it's the same as anything else. As soon as you set that up as your goal, then you block yourself. You don't really allow yourself to get there. But I talk about those things partly because sometimes just realizing that there is this potential allows our mind to go there. Yeah. It's very interesting. That's why guided meditations can be so effective, right? I'm not in your brain. I'm not like pulling the strings in your brain. But if you are in an open space and you're listening to a guided meditation that's kind of suggesting that your mind go into certain states, you can go there, right? Because that's our potential. That's our human potential. Sometimes we just don't know that there's that potential. And when someone just kind of guides us there, we can find our way. So I want you to know about things like PT and to realize that there is this capacity to just be with the stillness rather than with the objects of awareness. because that might be just enough to kind of push you into that. So I'm talking about, just to remind myself and you, I'm talking about inventory of our meditation practice, right? Just noticing how we're approaching it, and to see that there are these levels and these subtle levels that we can apply and experiment with, as Joseph says. Really, really play with it. That's why, again, tonight, whatever. It's night in England where Elizabeth is, so we'll say it's tonight. Hi, Elizabeth. I was talking about smile this morning. Smiling is just a really interesting thing to play with. I mean, if you're like, I'm going to smile when I'm meditating, okay, that's probably not going to help. But there's a way in which just this easeful turning up of the corners of the mouth can affect the mind state. What a discovery. I mean, I'd been meditating for many years before I heard about that. Then I tried it. I was like, well, that feels really good. But like, I've always had a thing about forcing smiles. I remember being a little kid and walking down the street, and some teenage girls walked by and said, oh, why don't you smile? Because I guess I, have this tendency to not smile. And I was like, in my mind, I didn't know the word fuck you, but that's what I thought in my mind. It's like, leave me alone, don't bother me, Hope I didn't, sorry to use foul language. But, it always like annoyed me when people say, oh, you should smile, And, but then I learned that, smiling in meditation actually works. And it really surprised me that it worked. And actually, this is like pro tip, as we say. PT can be triggered by smiling. So, enough said. Well, I was going to do more inventories, but that leaves us, and I have to remember this, that I still have to go through inventory of mindfulness and inventory of concentration, because both of those are really worth an entire session. But I think with time running down, I'd like to open it up for questions and comments. Any reflections from anyone, please?
Good morning.
Good morning.
California time.
Yeah.
It's Anne. Hi. You see me?
Oh, yeah. Hi, Anne.
My way at the end in the back of the class. I was just thinking about, you mentioned it, how we can bring this idea of effortless effort into, our lives and, situations. And, particularly situations where there's forceful efforting, based on a history of whatever that is, history of efforting in this situation. I recognize it when I'm in the moment. I can see it, but depending on the conditions, I don't. And I know probably in the moment, the antidote is to just pause, put a hand on my heart, realizing this is happening, the feelings, the thoughts, the critical stuff, So there's those situations where I'm so wound up in doing something, on a project, that it's difficult to, to break out of that. Yeah. But I think I have a lot more insight just talking about effort in the last few days or reading about it. I think I have a little insight into. But say something more about that effortless effort in our lives, And I know it's about control, right? Wanting to fix something or be something or.
Well, what comes up right away is identification. When when we really identify, when the ego really identifies with what we're doing, that's when it becomes uncomfortable, particularly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, the the thing about effortless effort is that first you have to learn to really make an effort. Like, you can't start out with effortless effort because you won't get anywhere. But, I always like to use the analogy, and really it's not even an analogy, it's to look at professional athletes. And it applies to musicians too, and artists, that they work very hard at their craft and develop all these skills. And then in the moment of execution, there's no thinking about it. There's no striving. There's just allowing the process to unfold. And it's the same way with meditation, that we have to do a lot of work to get to the point where effortless effort means anything, where it actually works. We have to train the mind to come back to the present moment. We have to train the mind to bring awareness to the body, to our feelings, to our perceptions, so that we're training it to not be in its habitual world of thoughts and self. And then we can kind of massage it into that, in a given meditation period, we can kind of do our practice and kind of do some sort of preparatory work. And then there's just kind of this click that okay, let go. And at that point, it's like either I kind of slide into it or I don't. And I have awareness there, which is noticing. This is the tracking, right? Like, okay, today, right now, I think I can just kind of let go. And you do it, and you try it, and either it kind of opens up, you feel like you're in that kind of spacious place, or instead, a minute later, you realize, oh, now I'm just spacing out. You realize, oh, there wasn't enough momentum, because there needs to be a kind of momentum of concentration and mindfulness in order to kind of fall into that, to flow into that. And generally, and now I'm sure there are more master meditators who don't struggle with this, but my experience in my practice, sometimes I can move into that space and sometimes I can't.
Right.
And as I say, I have to kind of track it in that moment. Maybe I'm going off from what you really wanted to talk about, because it was like you seemed to want to talk more about practice.
Yeah, well, there's this idea that, well, realizing that you can let go. I'm it's about bringing what you learn on the meditation cushion or chair or whatever into life, and that moment of letting go is pretty clear. Well, at some level, whatever level I'm at in my meditation practice, but it's clear that the letting go happens, and I can actually, sometimes I can even choose, right?
Yeah.
It's just that there's certain times in life where, because of entrenched patterns,
Yeah.
especially I suppose if there's trauma around it.
Yeah.
So I guess it's I think it's being aware of it in the moment, in life, whatever's happening. It's,
well,
I don't know, something's letting go in me around. So it's just, I don't know.
Well, I think there's always the perspective to have that broader perspective, that in the foreground is the effort, but in the background is kind of the observing what's happening with this, and am I getting caught in this?
Right.
And if the effort is not succeeding, how am I holding that?
Mm. Yeah.
Because that's sort of that's the third step of it, right? Turning it over. We make this effort, and then we have to let go. But of course, what we learn, what's sort of paradoxical, or I don't know if that's quite the right term, but is that sometimes when we fail and let go about the failure, then that winds up being a different kind of success. Right? Something else opens up, and there's a freedom that comes in that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of more golf analogies to go with this, but yeah. Joe doesn't go for that. You're not going to buy that. There must be limits to the golf analogies, and there are none. There are no limits to golf analogies. Golf is life. Life is golf. Just like everything else. Everything is life.
I grew up with a golfer, so I get it.
Oh yeah. Well, I know there's a lot of attachment around it, as and I know like there's this letting go, and one of the things that's very interesting, they say if there's a water hazard out there, if you say to yourself, don't hit the ball into the water hazard, what your mind hears is ball in the water hazard.
Right.
So it's like, what
That's
do you,
right.
where you focus your energy. So if I say, I really shouldn't strive too much in my meditation, your mind hears strive too much.
Yeah, got it. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Someone else, maybe one. Oh, there's some hands up. That's so nice. Elizabeth, you want to unmute yourself? Good.
Here I am. This is my reward for tuning in the evenings.
Yeah.
Thinking about that, both the inventory taking and the letting go, the way I see, and I hope I can explain this properly, the practical application of that effortless effort in our everyday daily lives is when we catch ourselves and stop ourselves from going into that automaticity of thought and deed. In other words, all that stuff that's on our step 4, the things that we have done as a result of self-centeredness, etc., and that we have pledged and that we're going to make an effort to change in our steps 6 and 7. And this is not an original thought. I think it's talked about in Joe and Charlie's book and in The Ripple Effect, that when you stop yourself, stop the automaticity of making the sarcastic remark or the comeback or, that egotistical way of doing stuff, which is all about me, then that gap, when you stop, you can decide what to do in that gap. Mm-hmm. And as Joe and Charlie recommend, you can do the exact opposite. Surprise yourself, be kind, be loving, be in that gap. So you can either do nothing, mm-hmm. You can just let that go. You have a choice, and this is where the freedom bit comes in, because you're free to choose what to do next. Yeah. But that gap is there. So it's a form of meditation, but you're pretty much alive and awake while you're doing it. But it's that, and then it can become effortless when you catch yourself. Yeah. Next time, I'll just be kind. Yeah. I'll be loving. Mm-hmm. I won't do the usual thing that I always do.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, it really does kind of point to the training aspect of this, and making that more habitual. But yeah, certainly it's the letting go. It's the not acting, which which is not even necessarily active in a sense. It's just that restraint that then nothing, you don't have to do anything. I guess that's one of the ways that sort of that even the term right effort can be a little deceptive, that it's non-doing that's more important than the doing. And then, yeah, you can bring in something like loving kindness intentionally. But as you say, in a lot of ways, we get trained to a point where that just kind of comes through sort of naturally. Shambo, did you want to say something? We have a couple, we can squeeze in a couple more minutes.
All right. Hey, good morning. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
So, it's really interesting. That this is the topic this morning. I was sitting this morning, and I've increased my meditation in the morning, and I was just sitting there thinking, man, I'm bored. It's just like, yeah, it's great. There's no thoughts. There's just a sensation of the breath, and just waiting for the bell to go off, and then I had this really interesting experience. I used to play with this great jazz bass player, and he was just a master, And I told him I was just like, man, I'm just getting really bored of the pentatonic scale and changes and things like that. And he just said, you got to play through that shit. You just got to play through it. And so then I started getting more modal, a lot of Mixolydian stuff and Lydian and all these things. And I thought to myself, well, is that right effort? Do I just sit through it? So I had all these because it's like I wasn't so bored, because then I started reminding myself, what happened to all that anger when I was down at Costco yesterday about that guy who wasn't wearing a mask. Or, it's just like, hardly a cooked goose here, but I was just really interested, like, where that boredom came from, so I guess that's my question. Yeah.
Well, what's his name? Graf. Anyway, there's a famous quote, which is, boredom is the lack of attention, which is a great line. And I think it applies to music too. Like notes can become boring, like if you're not really feeling them, if you're not really engaging in them. And the same with meditation, there's always something going on. And if it seems boring, it's because you're not noticing what's going on. And so what that suggests is that you need to actually increase your effort around the quality of investigation. Investigation is part of the 7 factors, one of the 7 factors of awakening. And it implies not a kind of logical thinking through something, but a looking very closely to see 2 things: the subtleties of an experience and the causal relationships in experience. So the subtleties of the experience are, can I feel more details of the breath, for instance, or can I listen more closely and hear the overtones of the bell when I ring the bell, right? That kind of really close attention. The causal part is a little more tricky, but means that we start to see, like, I'm having this feeling. What are the thoughts that are triggering that feeling? Or I'm having that thought. What are the feelings that are triggering that thought? And when we understand ourselves more deeply psychologically, what are the kind of roots, like Anne mentioned trauma, are there roots of trauma that are involved in why my mind tends to always go towards this particular painful memory, or that. So we start to, and again, we have to be careful that this doesn't turn into this proliferation of thinking, but investigation of kind of causality can help us to uproot that and kind of cut through those habits and see, oh, that's just me being attached to this idea. So the one example, and this is, I don't know if this is a perfect example, but I mentioned this recently in one of the classes, that, and I'll give you a little bit more detail of what I was talking about. I was on a retreat probably about 5 years ago. It was at IRC, the Insight Retreat Center, and I was doing walking meditation, and I started thinking about a woman that I was involved with when I first started to go on retreats. And it's sort of not surprising, you know, when you're on retreat, there's a tendency to remember all your previous retreats. This is one of the things about memory, to notice when you're doing an activity, you tend to think about all the other times you did that activity. So, and I'm thinking about this woman, and I'm falling into the same pattern of thoughts around this painful relationship from 40 years ago that I've fallen into on many, many retreats, thinking about these painful memories. And I finally stopped and I thought, I don't have to do this. You know, wow, whatever, you know, I mean, it was weird because the feeling inside me was, I need to think about this. You know, it's painful, but it's really important that I think about it. Like, what? Why? And I made a vow in that moment. No more. Anytime the mind starts to go to this place, I'm stopping. I'm interrupting it. So I set it up as a vow, and it stopped. And I haven't gone there since. So it's this seeing this. That's a complex causality, right? Because I'm in this particular situation, and because I'm in this situation, I'm having certain types of memories, and I'm also in a situation where there's a lot of quiet and space for my mind to drift, as it will do on a retreat. And so, but then to realize that another causality I can bring in is a vow to break that. So investigation, you know, coming back to the original point, investigating, like, what is going on? You know, this belief that I need to think about this. I need to stay in this really painful memory. Like you know, you're questioning that, right? So, I see that Angela has helpfully put in lots of information. And if you don't know how to save the chat down, I'm not sure how everybody's layout is if you're on a phone or an iPad, but on a computer, there's a little menu, 3 dots in the chat that you click on, and then it says save chat. So if you want to save any of these links and, you know, the way to give Donna, and I appreciate that people continue to give Donna. Thank you very much. And particularly to mention that this Friday we will not be on this Zoom account. We'll be on the Spirit Rock Zoom account, and it's 7:15. It's a little longer class, and I'm going to do some my plan. I haven't made a full plan, but because it's August, I'm going to talk about step 8 on Friday night. So just that heads up, to not come to this Zoom account, but to go to the Spirit Rock. And if you don't have the link, it's on my website, kevingriffin.net, and it's of course on the Spirit Rock website, and there's spiritrock.org. So thank you all for coming this morning, this afternoon.
Sorry.
What'd you say, Angela?
I just, yeah, it looks like you may have to actually go through like a registration, you know, it's still like donation based by Donna, but it looks like with the new system maybe. So just to give people a heads up that to do it a little bit in advance, just in case. Yeah, because it's not like you go to the website and the Zoom link is there like it's been
Oh yeah, I see they've got Retreat Guru in
Yeah.
their link now, which is the registration thing. Thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe go on around 7 and get on there. Um, so thank you all for coming. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. And I can literally say that, and it's meaningful.
Thanks.
Have a good day. Bye bye.
Thank you, Kevin. Have a good day. Have a
Thanks.
good evening.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.